Allow me to introduce myself. I am Emily. I am 37 years of age. I have spent 12 years in the bonds of marriage. We have a daughter who is 10, charming, humorous, and perhaps a touch too mature for her years. My husband Tom is truly a remarkable man. He puts in the effort, he cherishes our child, he ensures the bills are settled. On the surface, my life appears to be perfectly fine. Yet, fine can become a prison of its own making. Each day unfolds in a monotonous rhythm. As dawn breaks, I rise, prepare a hearty breakfast, and assemble lunches for the day ahead. Each morning, I take my daughter to school before heading to my small office in the heart of downtown, where I handle the accounting for clients who remain blissfully unaware of my existence. Upon my return to the familiar embrace of home, I prepare the evening meal. Tom shares the details of his day, and I respond with thoughtful nods at the appropriate moments. We lounge on the couch, engrossed in a television show that fails to capture our interest. After that, we retire for the night. He shifts to his side. I shift my focus to what belongs to me. Our goodnight kiss has become a ritual devoid of longing. In the stillness of the night, I find myself awake, pondering the moment when the spark of life began to fade from my existence. Things were not always as they are now. In the early days of our union, it was pure love, genuine affection. Yet existence possesses a remarkable ability to smooth the rough contours. Labor, invoices, a young one. Gradually and almost imperceptibly, you cease to gaze at one another as you once did. My feelings for him remain strong. I continue to hold him in high regard. Yet there are evenings when I find myself lying in bed beside my husband, and it feels as though I'm 1,000 miles away. It seems he remains oblivious. Perhaps he is aware, yet remains uncertain about how to proceed. That was my existence, trapped in a serene, monotonous, stifling routine, when everything changed. On a Tuesday evening, the memory lingers as I had just completed the tender ritual of tucking my daughter in for the night. Tom lay sprawled on the couch, lost in slumber, while the TV cast a soft, flickering glow in the background. As I settled into my chair, a glass of wine in hand, I found myself aimlessly scrolling through the endless stream of trivial posts on social media. And then, I beheld it. A small crimson alert. A message has arrived from Daniel Carter. For a moment the air escaped me. Daniel. The mere mention of it seemed to echo softly from a distant existence. For Daniel was far from ordinary. He was the one who captured my heart for the very first time. Our paths crossed when I was just 17. He was the boy who occupied the space behind me in history class, perpetually unleashing foolish jokes that landed me in hot water. We began conversing, then spending time together, and ultimately we fell in love in that grand, impulsive manner that is unique to youth. He meant the world to me in those days. The moment of my first kiss. The initial pang of true heartbreak. We believed our bond would last an eternity. Yet, upon completing my studies, I departed from our quaint little town to pursue my college education. He lingered in the shadows. We vowed to give it our all, yet we were just 18. Separation, fresh connections, different paths. It all drew us away from one another. There came a day when we simply ceased to reach out. And that was all there was to it. It had been nearly 2 decades since our paths last crossed. Up until that fateful night, I gazed at the message for what felt like an eternity, my heart racing in a manner it hadn't in years. My hands trembled with anticipation as I clicked it open. It was straightforward. Only a mere 6 words. Hello, Emily. Do you recall who I am? A gentle chuckle escaped my lips, despite the absence of any audience to witness it. Do you recall him? Certainly he was not forgotten. Your first love is a memory that lingers, never truly fading from the heart's canvas. Not quite. There was a moment of uncertainty. For an extended period, I might have chosen to overlook it. I had the option to erase it, shut my phone down and drift off to sleep. Yet I refrained. I responded in writing. Daniel. Wow, it feels like an eternity. That was all it required. In mere moments my phone vibrated once more. Indeed. I can hardly fathom that I have discovered you. How have you been? I assured him that I was perfectly fine. I was married and had a daughter. He mentioned that he was now divorced and had no children. He remained in the same town where we were raised, managing his own modest enterprise. Our conversation stretched on for an hour that night. Merely reconnecting, simply reflecting, seemed innocuous. Yet it was far from innocuous. From that moment on, our conversations unfolded each night. It started with the small moments. Do you recall when we ditched prom to head to the lake? Do you still have a disdain for pineapple on pizza? Yet it delved further. How is your union faring? Do you find joy in your life? I gazed at that question for what felt like an eternity. Did I feel joy? I typed. Indeed. It is quite satisfactory. Everything is just fine. Yet, as I dispatched it, a sense of falsehood weighed heavily within me. Daniel confided that he had never truly moved on from me. Whenever that particular song played, he was reminded of me. A profound ache settled within me, one that eluded explanation. For the reality was, he had crossed my mind as well. Not on every occasion, not even annually. Yet, in those moments when existence seemed especially still, I found myself pondering, what if? What if I had chosen to stay? What if we had chosen to remain united? Am I destined for greater happiness? On a particular evening, he shared with me a vintage photograph. There we were at 17, perched on the hood of his battered car, laughter spilling from us as if time were an endless gift. I gazed at that photograph for what felt like an eternity. I appeared quite refreshed in it. I appeared neither worn nor faded. I gazed a vibrant. Oh, how young we were, I wrote. We were in love, he said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. In that instant I sensed it. The brief glimmer. The minuscule glimmer. The one you believe fades away as the years pass. As existence becomes entwined with familiar patterns and obligations. Yet it remained alive. It remained unwavering. Anticipating. Subsequently, our exchanges began to stretch in length. There were moments when we lingered in the quiet hours, lost in conversation long after the clock struck midnight. Concerning the realm of music. Concerning the aspirations we left unpursued. Reflecting on the unexpected twists and turns that life has taken, diverging from our initial expectations. Anticipation began to swell within me. For him. As dusk settled, he penned down his thoughts. Next week, I'll be arriving in your city. For professional purposes. Perhaps we could meet for a coffee? Are we simply reconnecting? My heart leapt. I replied, sure. Only coffee. Only coffee. That's what I reminded myself. Yet, beneath the surface, I believe I had always been aware. It was destined to be more than mere coffee. I reassured myself that it was merely coffee. 60 minutes. A straightforward exchange of words. Two long-lost friends reconnecting after nearly 2 decades apart. What damage might it cause? I found myself uttering those words over and over on the day our paths crossed once more. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky on that Thursday. I recall the moment I stood outside the quaint cafe by the park, my hands feeling cold despite the mildness of the day. I arrived ahead of schedule. I consistently find myself in that state. I lingered at a table by the window, feigning interest in my phone, yet deep down, I was simply waiting. And then, I laid eyes on him. Daniel. He entered the room and for an instant, I found myself momentarily breathless. He certainly appeared older. We each did. Yet, it was in the manner that rendered him authentic. Gentler in its approach with a touch more stability. His hair bore a hint of gray at the temples. He donned a modest button-up shirt, the sleeves casually rolled to his elbows. Yet that smile of his smile remained unchanged. The very same that had the power to unravel me when we were just 17. Emily, he murmured gently, as if the very sound of his voice could cause me to slip away into the ether. Hello, I murmured. And in an instant 2 decades vanished. Coffee was ordered by us. We took our seats. Initially, it began with casual conversation. What was the journey like? How is your work going? How is your daughter doing? Yet, gradually it transformed into something greater. We reminisced about our high school teachers, chuckling over the ridiculous pranks he would orchestrate, reflecting on how we believed we had it all figured out in those days. And then we delved into the weightier matters. The dissolution of his marriage. My union. I regret that things didn't unfold as you hoped, I said softly. He shrugged, offering that familiar crooked half-smile that lingered in my memory. At times, love alone may not suffice. Or perhaps at times it was never truly love. He gazed at me then directly into my eyes, and I sensed it, that silent connection lingering in the air between us. That we had cherished one another. Perhaps we truly did. When he inquired about my happiness, I found myself momentarily paralyzed. My mind wandered to Tom. In the stillness of our evening meals, he remains oblivious to the fact that I've purchased a new dress. It's been ages since he kissed me just for the sake of it. I can hardly recall when that last happened. I'm fine, I finally replied. Daniel inclined his head, observing me intently. Being fine does not equate to being happy. I found myself at a loss for words. We lingered there for a couple of hours, perhaps 3. Time drifted by, just as it always did when we were side by side. As we finally rose to depart, an unfamiliar sensation washed over me, one I hadn't experienced in years. Illumination. Vibrant. As if I had momentarily escaped from a life that no longer suited me, even if just for an instant. Following that, our gatherings became more frequent. Let's have lunch here. There's coffee. Perpetually found in communal spaces. Perpetually pure. Yet it lacked a sense of innocence. For each occasion we found ourselves inching a bit nearer. We would share our laughter a moment more. We would tarry just a touch longer at the conclusion. One afternoon lingers in my memory, unforgettable and vivid. Our paths crossed in the park. The warmth enveloped the scene, casting a soft golden light that rendered everything as if it were a cherished memory. We strolled for hours, sharing thoughts on the aspirations we left behind. I always imagined you'd end up in New York, he remarked. Become a renowned designer or a celebrated writer or something. Your spirit burned with an undeniable intensity. I chuckled gently. Indeed, fate had a different course in mind. He halted his steps, pivoting to meet my gaze. Do you find yourself longing for her? He inquired. Who is it? The girl you once were. A constriction gripped my throat. Each day, I murmured. On that day our hands remained apart. Yet it seemed nearer than mere contact. For the reason that he laid his eyes upon me. Not the spouse. Not the maternal figure. Not the woman piecing together a family from 1,000 fragments. He caught sight of me. It wasn't until it stood before me that I truly understood the depth of my longing for it. Following that point, the text began to expand in length. Whispers in the dark, reminiscing about days gone by. Reflecting on the choices we might have made in another light. At times, he would weave in a touch of gentleness. I have always believed you to be the most stunning girl I have ever encountered. Alternatively, the memory of your laughter by the lake that night lingers in my mind. Trivial details that ought to hold no significance. Yet they did. For the simple reason that no one else uttered them anymore. One evening, following one of those lengthy discussions, he sent a message that took my breath away for a moment. Emily, my love for you has never wavered. My gaze was fixed on the screen. My fingers lingered above the keyboard. At last I composed my thoughts. I too have never ceased. That was the defining moment. The moment when everything changed. The moment we stepped over an unseen boundary from which there was no return. 7 days passed and once more we found ourselves face to face. It was meant to be merely another cup of coffee. Yet, as I caught sight of him standing there, patiently awaiting my arrival, the familiar tug of emotion washed over me, reminiscent of that intense feeling I experienced at 17. In that moment the realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I was in deep trouble. We settled into our seats, yet the conversation remained sparse. The silence that lingered between us had transformed, no longer bearing the weight of awkwardness. It bore a weighty presence. Complete. Daniel extended his hand across the table, his fingers lightly grazing over mine. Only for a moment, just the right amount to quicken my pulse. I ought to have withdrawn my hand, yet I refrained. As we stepped outside, a gentle rain began to fall. He sheltered us with an umbrella, yet we remained near to one another, uncomfortably near. Emily, he murmured gently. I glanced in his direction. In that fleeting instant, all else faded away from my mind. My partner, my beloved daughter, my existence. He was the only thing that captured my attention. The young lad who captured my heart for the very first time. The man who had the power to evoke the sensations of my youth, making me feel as if I were still 17. That day he refrained from kissing me. Yet, as I returned home that evening, the thought of what it might feel like if he did lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. And I believe beneath the surface I had always understood it was merely a question of time. It unfolded on a Friday evening. A night that starts just like any other. The sort you believe will conclude in the familiar manner it invariably does. Yet it did not. Tom had brought our daughter to his parents' home for the weekend. He mentioned that a visit would be beneficial for them, and to be honest, I believe he understood that I required some solitude. I mentioned that I would remain at home, attend to some work, and perhaps indulge in a bit of relaxation. Yet I refrained. That very afternoon, a message from Daniel arrived on my phone. I find myself in the city this evening. Would you care to join me? For dinner? Only the two of us? The message held my gaze for what felt like an eternity. I might have chosen to decline. I might have chosen to overlook it, filled a glass with wine, and surrendered to a quiet evening. However, I ended up typing. Indeed. Our paths crossed at a quaint little eatery hidden along a serene lane. Every detail lingers in my memory. The gentle radiance of the illumination. The gentle murmur of melodies lingers in the air. He was there, poised and ready the moment I stepped inside. Upon catching sight of me, he rose to his feet. His gaze mellowed, just as it always did whenever he turned it toward me. "Hello," he remarked, a soft smile gracing his lips. "Hello," I murmured in response. A bottle of wine was ordered. We dined. Yet, above all, our conversations flowed. It's no longer about the comfortable choices. It's not focused on nostalgic high school experiences or past humor. We engaged in a conversation about our relationship, reflecting on our shared experiences, concerning what has slipped away from us, reflecting on the significance of our reunion after so many years apart. And in that delicate space between the first glass of wine and the second, the atmosphere shifted between us. I sensed it deeply, as he leaned in closer while I spoke, as his hand lightly grazed mine while he offered me the bread. His voice softened, creating an intimate bubble around us, as if we were the only two souls in existence. I sensed it within me as well. The incessant tug. That pain I hadn't experienced in ages. Not alongside Tom. Alone. Following dinner, we found ourselves reluctant to let the evening slip away. Thus we strolled onward, along serene avenues, beneath the gentle illumination of lamplight. The night was warm, enveloping everything in a weighty silence that hinted at unspoken truths. Our conversation was sparse. There was no necessity for that. At a certain moment we came to a halt. We found ourselves positioned before his hotel. "This is me," he murmured gently. I averted my gaze, avoiding his eyes at all costs. For I was aware of the consequences that would unfold should my gaze meet his. And I found myself questioning whether I possessed the strength to put an end to it. "Emily," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. At last I raised my gaze, and that was all there was to it. He remained silent. He acted without a moment's pause. He simply leaned closer and pressed his lips against mine. It was not a kiss that ignited with fervent desire. The pace was languid, soft, yet it brimmed with 2 decades of unfulfilled possibilities, brimming with the echoes of the girl I once was, brimming with all that I had been unknowingly yearning for until that very instant. I ought to have distanced myself. I ought to have kept my husband in mind, my beloved daughter, my existence spent in anticipation at home. Yet I refrained. In that instant all else faded away. Only he remained. Only I. And the sensation of being acknowledged once more. We ascended the stairs. I'm uncertain about the journey that led us to this point. The elevator ride, the hallway, the door swinging open. None of it lingers in my memory. What lingers in my mind is the subtle tremor of his hands as they brushed against my face. "Do you really mean that?" he inquired gently. I gave a slight nod. What transpired thereafter? It lacked any sense of wildness. It unfolded at a measured pace. It was meticulous, gentle. It felt as though we were both hesitant, fearing that the moment would vanish if we rushed forward. In his embrace I felt ageless, untouched by the passage of time. Not yet 37. I was not a wife. I was not a mother. I was simply Emily, the young woman who once cherished this man with every fiber of her being. In the stillness that followed, we remained there, enveloped in silence. The air was tinged with a subtle scent of rain mingling with the crispness of freshly laundered hotel linens. I gazed at the ceiling, my heart pounding, my thoughts empty. After what felt like an eternity, a spark of vitality coursed through me once more. And for the first time in years I experienced a profound sense of being genuinely acknowledged. Yet, in that moment, I beheld it, the ring that symbolizes my union in marriage. It remains upon my finger, continuing to radiate in the faint glow. In that moment the weight of guilt descended upon me. I propped myself up, wrapping the sheet tightly around me, my breath unsteady. "Emily," Daniel murmured gently, extending his hand toward mine. I gazed into his eyes and found no trace of regret there, just a hint of gentleness. "Please don't," he murmured softly. "Do not look back on this with regret. I beg you. However, I have already taken care of that." Yet I refrained. Simultaneously, I think I should leave," I murmured, my voice trembling. He also sat up. "There's no obligation. Remain by my side. Only for this evening." A weight settled heavily upon my chest. I had the desire to. Oh, how I longed to. Yet I found myself unable to do so, for I understood that if I lingered, I may never find my way out. I slipped into my clothes without a sound. Just before my departure, he drew me near, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. "I continue to love you," he whispered softly. And I murmured in response, my voice barely rising above a whisper, "I continue to love you as well." As I stepped out of the hotel, the chill of the night enveloped me. The streets lay in hushed stillness, yet within me raged a tempest, because I understood that I could not reverse the actions I had taken. Upon my arrival, the house lay shrouded in darkness. I lingered in the hallway, enveloped by an expansive silence that stretched on endlessly. For the very first time in my existence, I sensed the unfamiliarity of being a stranger within the confines of my own home. That evening I found myself in bed, solitary and contemplative. I gazed up at the ceiling, my fingers brushing against the wedding ring adorning my hand. I found myself reflecting on Daniel, concerning the manner in which he gazed at me. For a fleeting few hours, I was transported back to the sensation of being cherished in that profound way. I was certain it wouldn't occur once more. I reassured myself that it wouldn't happen. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware all along. Indeed it would. The dawn that followed was the most challenging. I rose with the dawn, despite the restless night that had left me untouched by true slumber. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, gentle yet relentless. As I lingered at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in my hands, I found myself lost in a void of thought, gazing into the emptiness before me. And then, as if on cue, the unmistakable sound of the garage door creaking open filled the air. Tom had returned. He entered, the overnight bag for our daughter slung over his shoulder. He pressed his lips to my cheek just as he always had. "Morning," he said, a smile gracing his lips, weary yet satisfied. "Good morning," I murmured softly. It happened without thought. He remained oblivious to the subtle tremor of my hands. He remained oblivious to the weight that lingered in my gaze. What would compel him to do that? For him everything remained the same. Yet for me all had changed. The entirety of that day carried an air of peculiarity. I drifted through the tasks of the day, laundry, groceries, preparing dinner, as if in a dreamlike state. Throughout it all, Daniel lingered in my thoughts. That voice of his, those hands of his, the manner in which he uttered, "I still love you." And then immediately afterward, a wave of guilt would wash over me. The truth remained uncomplicated, regardless of my attempts to rationalize it. I had deceived my husband. I had let my daughter down. I had turned against my own essence. Yet I found myself unable to resist the pull. The following day, Daniel sent me a text. "Is everything all right?" I gazed at the message, lost in thought for what felt like an eternity. Next I began to write. "No, indeed. I'm uncertain." He responded without delay. May I have the pleasure of your company? I ought to have declined, yet I refrained. Our paths crossed once more. Once more. Initially, it was merely a conversation. Yet, it was never merely a conversation. For once you have stepped over that threshold, you can no longer feign its absence. Daniel yearned for something greater. Not merely an increase of this. He desired me. He yearned for a future. One afternoon, after we had shared countless moments, he cradled my face in his hands and spoke softly. Let him be. Stay by my side. We have the opportunity to begin anew. We can embrace the life that was destined for us. His words pierced through me, leaving my heart heavy with sorrow. A fragment of my being yearned to utter the word yes. A fragment of my soul yearned to escape, to embrace the sweet taste of freedom, to be recognized and cherished as I once was. Yet, there existed another facet of my being. The moment that captured my daughter's expression. The fragment that held on to the years I had woven with Tom. The section that understood the extent of the destruction it would unleash. I cannot, I murmured softly. Daniel averted his gaze, his jaw clenched in tension. Is it that you can't, or that you simply won't? I remained silent. I was unaware. The ensuing weeks unfolded in a haze of paradoxes. I would rise beside Tom, prepare breakfast, and take my daughter to school. In those hushed intervals, I would reach out to Daniel through a message. I would rendezvous with him for lunch. I would share with him the secrets I dared not reveal to anyone else. With each secret and every deceit, the burden on my chest intensified. I began to sense the existence of two distinct selves within me. Within the confines of my home, I embodied the roles of Emily the wife and Emily the mother. In Daniel's presence, I became Emily, the woman who clung to her dreams, who found joy in laughter, who truly felt the pulse of life within her. And I found myself lost, unable to discern which one was genuine any longer. One evening, Tom returned home ahead of schedule. In the kitchen, he enveloped me in his embrace, catching me off guard. Hello, he murmured gently. Are you all right? You appear to be somewhat preoccupied as of late. I stood still, my body locked in place. I summoned a smile. Simply weary. The workload has been quite demanding lately. He pressed his lips gently to my forehead and then released his hold. And that caused even deeper pain. For the reality was, he truly didn't perceive my presence. Certainly not in the manner that Daniel approached it. Yet, Daniel had his own flaws as well. His impatience began to surface. I can't continue to be the man you only encounter in the shadows, he confided to me one evening. I desire a future with you, Emily. Not merely fragments of yourself. I felt an overwhelming urge to shout that I desired the very same thing. Yet I refrained. For the simple reason that I was unable to. The debate commenced. Not the boisterous, furious types. Yet they are silent, throbbing whispers. Him. Do you truly love me? Or is it merely the recollection of our time together that captivates you? Me? I'm uncertain. Perhaps a combination of the two, he said. Then make your choice. I cannot remain in this state of uncertainty indefinitely. After those conversations, I would return home and gaze at my daughter as she slept peacefully. How could I possibly do that to her? How could I possibly dismantle the only family she has ever known? Yet there I would be, lying in bed beside Tom, enveloped in an unsettling void of emotion. And that filled me with even greater fear. I began to question whether my feelings for Daniel were truly love, or perhaps it was the affection I held for the version of myself that emerged in his presence. The version of myself from years past. The liberated version of myself. The version of me that remained untouched by the weight of endless routine and obligation. On a particular night, Daniel reached out to me with a message. I can no longer continue with this. This isn't the way. If you desire me, truly desire me, speak up. If not, I'll release you. I gazed at it for what seemed like an eternity. My hands trembled with an unsteady rhythm. My heart raced with fervor. I found myself wanting to say yes. Yet I found myself unable to do so. I chose not to respond. The following day, he remained silent. The following day, silence lingered on. In that moment, the silence enveloped everything. A weighty presence that seemed to echo through the air. In that moment, it dawned on me that I was slipping away from him. Yet I found myself slipping away. On a quiet afternoon, I found myself parked outside his apartment, lost in thought. I had no intention of going there. My hand simply took the wheel. As he swung the door open, his gaze met mine with an unsettling familiarity, as if he possessed the knowledge of my words before they even formed on my lips. "I cannot abandon them," I murmured. His expression dimmed. Yet he inclined his head in agreement. "I understand." Thus commenced the twilight of an era. Following that, our encounters became infrequent. The messages ceased to arrive each night. The lunches became mere pretexts. The distance between us expanded, gradually yet persistently, resembling an irreparable fissure. Within the confines of home, everything remained as it always had. Tom pressed his lips gently against my cheek. My daughter embraced me with a goodnight hug. Yet within me there was an emptiness. For I had caught a fleeting glimpse of something, and I had chosen to release it. I began to ponder whether that is the essence of life itself. A sequence of decisions. And at times you opt for the path that brings less pain, rather than the one your heart truly desires. Yet beneath the surface I was aware. I had not merely lost Daniel. I had relinquished the final fragment of my being that still held faith and love of that kind. On a serene Sunday afternoon I made my decision. Not due to a sudden surge of strength. Not due to a sudden cessation of my love for him. Yet, the weight of the silence that lingered between us had become unbearable. I sent him a message. "Shall we arrange a meeting?" Only one final time. A moment of silence hung in the air. At last his response arrived. Where might that be? The lake was our choice. The very lake we frequented in our 17-year-old days. The very lake where our lips first met. Perched on the hood of his weathered car, believing that nothing could ever shift in our universe. Yet it had. We possessed. Upon my arrival he was already there, waiting. He stood by his car, hands tucked into his pockets, gazing out at the water. Upon catching sight of me, a smile spread across his face. Yet it was not the smile that lingered in my memory. Possessed a gentler quality, more melancholic. "Hello," he murmured softly. "Hello," I murmured. In that fleeting instant we remained perfectly still. The lake lay in perfect tranquility. The trees stood stripped of their foliage, their reflections quivering delicately upon the water's surface. It was as if time had bent in on itself. It felt as if we were existing in parallel realities, the life we lived and the life that could have been ours. I approached with measured steps. "This can't go on," I remarked. Though my voice remained steady, turmoil brewed within me. He nodded slowly, as if those words had been anticipated for a long time. "I understand," he replied. "I've been aware for some time." I took a deep breath. "I cannot abandon them. I considered the possibility, yet it eludes me. She requires my presence. And he hasn't done anything to warrant this." Daniel cast his gaze downward, his jaw clenching with tension. "And what of what we are entitled to?" he inquired gently. I found myself without a response, for I had lost all sense of certainty. He moved nearer, his gaze probing into my own. "I loved you back then," he remarked. His voice quivered. "I cherish you in this moment. I will likely cherish you for all my days to come." Hot tears welled up in my eyes. "I love you as well," I murmured softly. And that was the reality. Yet there are moments when love alone falls short. A prolonged silence enveloped the room. The sort that seems poised to shatter you. He released a slow breath. "So this is farewell," he uttered. "It is not a question, merely a declaration." He extended his hand and brushed my cheek gently one final time. His fingers hovered, etching my essence into his memory. And then he pressed his lips against mine. It was nothing like that initial kiss. It was different from the previous one. It was soft and soothing, concluding. A door closing that neither of us wished to close. As he withdrew, he lingered for a heartbeat, pressing his forehead gently against mine. "Look after yourself, Emily," he whispered softly, and I uttered the sole words that came to mind. "You as well." He then pivoted and strode off into the distance. Forward is the only direction. Silence prevails. Simply vanished. I lingered in that spot long after he had vanished from sight. The breeze intensified. The surface of the water shimmered with gentle undulations, and I experienced a profound sense of emptiness, not solely due to his absence. Yet I was acutely aware that I had lost the essence of who I was in his presence. That evening I returned to my abode. Tom stood in the kitchen preparing a pot of tea. Our daughter sat at the table, immersed in her coloring. As I entered, a smile graced my lips, and I gently pressed a kiss on each of their foreheads. All appeared unchanged. Yet I found myself not in that place. As the days passed, existence gradually returned to its familiar rhythm. Rise and shine. Prepare the morning meal. Head to your place of employment. Return to the place where you belong. Tom pressed his lips gently against my cheek. My daughter still embraced me with a goodnight hug, and no one ever discovered. Yet I was aware. In those quiet hours of the night, when the house holds its breath and the world seems suspended in time, with a gentle flutter of my eyelids, I find myself transported to that place once more, returning to the lake once more enveloped in his embrace, returning to an existence that never truly belonged to me. Do I feel remorse for it?
I'm uncertain.
I deeply regret the pain I have caused my family. I feel remorse for my deception. I lament the burden that will remain with me eternally. But what about him? Absolutely not. I hold no regrets about him. Not even for a moment. For a fleeting instant, just a whisper of time. I recalled the essence of my former self. I recalled the sensation of being cherished in such a way. And despite the price being beyond what I can express, I wouldn't categorize that as a mistake. Not completely. Yet, he held the title of my first love. He turned out to be my final error.